Good morning, good morning, good morning. And thank you, Susan, for giving us a different perspective of what we can see. I'll tell you, it is an amazing thing to see because oftentimes we look, but we don't see. And when we realize that we can see something different, there's another vantage point, we can begin to look at this idea of peace in a different way. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for being here and welcome to CSL Denver, a place, a space, and a face of love, a spiritual community teaching universal principles and applying ancient wisdom to empower our lives and the lives of others. Now, to do that, though, there's this little thing called awareness. You got to be aware. It's kind of like looking and seeing. When you're looking, you're not aware. But when you're seeing, you are aware. You are aware. And this month's theme of putting a piece for the pieces, or pieces into peace, we're going to look at today this topic of waking up to oneness. Because peace exudes this idea of oneness. We've seen all the pictures, I'm sure, of the pastoral vision with the lamb and the lion and all these things that are supposed to be opposites together in a state of peace, in a state of recognition, in a state of realizing that it takes all of us, all of the pieces, to create this peace which sits on a foundation of oneness. That sits on a foundation of oneness. Now, to me, and this teaching by Ernest Holmes is paramount, because if we could get that first slide, Ernest Holmes says this, right in the Declaration of Principles. We can get that first slide. There we go. There we go. It was a oneness thing waiting to happen there. Bam, and it happened. Okay. The first thing in our statement of principles, and I wanted just this part. There's a piece that goes after this, says, we believe in God, the living spirit almighty, one, indestructible, absolute, and self-existing cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by it. Now that's a little bit to unpack right there, because if we broke it down into street language, it's basically saying you is me and I is you, but whatever that is that's us is bigger than us. Now we have to really break this down, because in the beginning there was, they say, nothing, but nothing from nothing leaves nothing. So we know there was something.
There was always God.
There was always God. And then that one thing allowed itself to be expressed. It allowed itself to basically create a divine puzzle, if you will, a tapestry that comes together and creates this harmony, this unity, this peace. Now, that can be displayed in many different ways. You know, it could be displayed through music, through art, through dance. But when you look at these things, and I use those because they kind of stand on their own. They don't really have any personality. Even though the person doing it may have a personality and some of it goes into those things, the thing itself has no attachment to any personality. It is what it is, and it stands on its own, and it allows us to open up. It allows us to open up. And I think one of the hardest things for the understanding mind to pick up when we start talking about waking up to oneness, to create this pieces into peace, this pieces into oneness, is that oneness is not some abstract concept. It's not something we just talk about. It's not something we think about intellectually. It's something that has to be realized in our lives. It has to be exercised. It has to be lived out. Because if it's not, do you really know what you're talking about when you say oneness? Now, I'm going to be a little provocative.
Yay.
But I'm telling you, if you've never had a kiss and someone tries to explain it to you, I don't know. That's a hard thing to explain, because there's so many different ways to kiss. But when you had that kiss, no matter how it came, no matter who provided it, there's a sense of understanding. There's a sense of knowing. And this theoretical idea is pale by comparison. Because if you've never had that, and I say, oh yeah, I'm going to go kiss my wife today, or you should go and kiss your partner today, and you've never done that, you're thinking, okay. But if you've kissed your partner, and I say you should go home and kiss your partner and show him some compassion, all kinds of things start happening in your brain. And that's what we need to happen every time we think about peace and oneness on this planet, in our lives, in our communities, in our relationships. Because we are now at a very, I believe, critical point in humanity's history, where everything, all the signs, all the symbols, all the songs, all the dances are pointing to a brighter day. But as the old adage goes, you have to go through the storm to get to the brighter day. That's just how it works. I just came back from Florida, where it rained almost every day. But it would go away and the sun would come out. And you begin to understand what that means. You begin to understand that if we do not allow ourselves to be conditioned by what seems to be separate, opposite things, we can get a different perspective. We can get a different. Now, most of us, we've been brought up to think of things as separate. I don't care what kind of training you had. I don't care where you come from, north, south, east, west. We've been taught that things are separate. Right, wrong, good, bad, up, down. But in reality, we're looking at one thing and we're honing in on a certain spectrum of the whole thing, and we have put labels on boundaries of that one thing. We've set it up in degrees. You know, there was a joke that once this I think it was what was his name? I forget this comedian's name, but he made this statement. I'm gonna think of it. He said, if there had been one more notch on that thermometer, I'd have froze to death. Because it's a degree thing. Yeah. It's a degree. Life is not this or that. It is shades and steps of degrees. And when we can really begin to look at life in that way, I submit that peace would automatically just pop into our lives. We wouldn't even have to think about it. It would just emerge. Now, when I think about this quote from Anonymous, you know, Anonymous is a very special person. They have a lot of good things to say. And it says, as we learn to see God in everything, we gradually lose the sense of separation and difference and feel oneness with all life. when we learn to see God in everything, that means the so-called good and the so-called bad, because it's a perspective. Two people standing in the rain. I just did it. Somebody said, oh, shucks. Somebody said, oh, God. Same rains, relatively the same spot, but two different perspectives of the same thing. Meaning that somewhere in there is a connecting point. That it's something in our own perspective. It's something in our own thought, our own experiences that have allowed us to separate from the wholeness of rain, if you will. And that creates a real challenge as we look at life today. Because I don't care where you look. I don't even care if you ain't trying to look. Separation is highlighted everywhere, and especially during the time that we're in right now. Because I can wake up the morning and I can see things on this side and say, oh yeah, okay, I can get with that. I wake up tomorrow and say, I don't like that no more. I think this is better. I think this is more correct. And then I wake up in the next morning, none of that's correct. So we have this way of trying to integrate these things into our lives. And if it feels good, most of the time, we'll agree, we'll say, okay, yeah, that's right. Now, if it don't feel good, we start separating again. So we have to move beyond, not that we don't use our senses of feel and our senses of sight and all of that, but we have to begin to synthesize, as they say, to bring all of this stuff into a oneness, a cohesive point that says, this is the road, this is the way. And rocky may the road be, I will still traverse. I will still traverse. Because when we can see ourselves, as he was saying, in everyone and everything, we become fully engaged in life. Because I'm looking with new eyes, right? I can begin to find myself immersed in nature or immersed in a situation. Have any of you ever had this idea or this situation, rather, where you hear people talking about life slows down? Have you ever been in there and then all of a sudden it just things start look like slow motion, where everything seems to be in harmony, where everything seems to be a caption of everything else? We talk about it often when we talk about rainforests, or we talk about it often when we talk about ocean life, or we talk about it often when we talk about the integration of the body. There's this connectedness, there's this oneness that operates in peace, regardless of appearances. And when we can begin to look at each other and see the divine, and to see ourselves even, now we're on the right path. Because we all have our own confusion. There's a song by Bill Withers that he said, we all have our own confusion because we're working from a point of separation. We're working from a point of separation. And when we can awaken to that knowledge, I think Deepak Chopra says it better than I can say it. And Deepak says this: awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not. Yes. That when we can do that, we have all power in our hands, as they say. We really and truly become the hand and feet of the divine. Because, how many times have you heard, well, it's not about you. It's not about you. And how many times have you found yourself in a situation where either you or somebody else has always tried to make it about you? Somebody's telling you about their problem. Yeah, well, when I had that problem, we ain't talking about your problem. We talking about my problem. You said you were going to help me. Now you telling me about your stuff. There'll be a time and place for that maybe, but not right now. We have to begin to look at life in this manner. Because if we don't, the old adage, if you want to keep getting what you're getting, keep doing what you're doing. And it looks like we just keep doing what we're doing and complaining. And complain. You know, we send a heartfelt prayer to all the families and those who lost their lives in Georgia over senseless separation. Somebody, for whatever reason, did not see the pieces that led to peace, or did not see the peace in the pieces. And so now, once again, we've found ourselves in this pivotal point of saying, not only why, but can we stop it? Can we come together as one where we don't have senseless killing? We know people die every day. There's car wrecks, people fall out of trees. There's all kinds of ways people pass. And let y'all know the secret if y'all don't know it already. We all going that way. That's the only guarantee we have once we're born into this planet, that we will transition into another spectrum of life. So the idea is not about trying to avoid that, because you can't. The idea is, how do we live in peace, in oneness, so that everybody enjoys the fruits of their labor, if you will. Everybody enjoys the cool of the shade. Because that's when we really understand peace, when we really understand oneness. I was on a boat. We was in the channel and going by some of these houses that were, oh my goodness. There's too much house for some people, I'm sure. And in some cases, it was just a weekend house. And I sat there for a moment and I thought, and I said to my comrades who were on the boat with me, I said, you know, and we were having a great time. Sun was out, we were fishing, and we was just thinking, and I said, what if everybody could have this sense of wonderment every day? To have this sense of leisure every day. To have this sense of work, trying to catch the fish. I got a fish stung me right in my hand. It's hurting right now. But there was so much joy in trying to get it off the hook. There was joy, there was work, there was pain. But the overall feeling of that was oneness, was joy. What is it going to take for us to step into that? Well, I'm going to give us a couple of things, 3 things to be exact, to help us awaken to this oneness, to awaken to this idea of life is not a struggle. Life is not this separated thing. It is this one thing that works intricately together. The first one is probably obvious. We have to release our sense, illusion of separation. That's first and foremost. We have to begin to reprogram our mind, however we can do that, to understand that I am you and you are me. The air we breathe is the same air, especially in this room, even outside, doesn't matter. The water we drink eventually becomes the air we breathe back in. There's a connectedness there. It's not separate. Your body is 70 plus, depending on who's counting and what they're saying, of water. Not only water, but a water with the salinity that is almost exact to the ocean. I mean, that alone should, wait a minute, hold up. You mean I got an ocean flowing inside of me? Yes. And you inside the ocean, and the ocean's in you. We have to release this idea, this illusion of separation. And perspective is the key. We have to change our perspective. We can't just look at a thing straight on. We gotta circumnavigate. We gotta go around it. Gotta get on top of it. We have to get up under it to really understand what it is we're looking at, what we're dealing with in this thing called life. That's one thing that is not separate, that is whole and complete. Because when we can do that, you know, there's that song that says "Whistle while you work," you know, which speaks to this idea of I may be working, but I'm having fun. There's a oneness in this. There's a joy in this. That's when we begin to say, okay, I think I got something here. And Lao Tzu says this when we look at this thing on illusion. To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. And that's what happens when you step into peace. You surrender. Your mind is still, and you can begin to see things that you've never seen before, or you've looked at but never seen. You know, my wife, she always gets on my case because I'll watch a movie, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Same movie. She said, "You watching that thing again?" "Yeah, I'm watching it again." Because every time I see it, I see something different. And I sit there and say, and I've watched this 8 times. How did I not see that the other 8 times? Because for some reason, there was a separation in my vision and my heart and my mind that didn't allow me to see it. But the more I see it, the more I take in, the less of the illusion. And, you know, movies are all about illusion. So you really need to watch them 2, 3 times, or else you'll get caught up in the illusion. But when we do that, and we look at this air we breathe and the energy field that each one of us has that merges together. Now, previously, you know, if you'd said something like that, they would say, "Oh, this is a hippie," or "who that," whatever. But now the quantum physics has categorically affirmed that that is true. And when we look at the wave particle duality, I'm getting scientific on you, but when you look at two fields that come together, they either cancel each other out, and most of the time they increase, right? So they come together and create a peace, a stillness, as Lao Tzu was just saying, or it increases because they're in harmony, they're in resonance, they understand the oneness of it. Now we're moving forward with this idea of peace and oneness. Now, once we've gotten this battle, and I'll say battle, that's probably not the right word, but sometime it is, of getting rid of the illusion of separation, we have to step into compassion. Because we've been trained otherwise. We've been trained. The Dalai Lama says this. Let me just start with the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. So in other words, you can't get away from compassion. And when we can step into that eyes of understanding, because that's compassion is understanding and without judgment. And judgment is different from an awareness or an opinion or a perception. Because everybody is making an assessment when they cross the street. When you go home today and you got to turn right on the street, you're making an assessment. Can I turn before the other car gets here? We have to begin to look at it in compassion and stop judging, stop looking at things in a way that knocks harmony off his feet. Now, when we think about compassion, there's one thing, my wife, if she's watching this, she's going to be jumping for joy right now. because she said this to me all the time. There is a science of hugging. I don't know if you ever heard of the science of hugging. There's a science of hugging, and hugging is one of the most universal ways of showing compassion. Well, in the science of hugging, the body releases oxytocin and other hormones. And by the way, when oxytocin, it called that the cuddle emotion, chemical. It creates this environment where it allows us to relax and send waves of happiness and joy and comfort and release through our bodies. Compassion. We need that more than we need, well, we need that. We need that. Because if we don't have that, there's a thing that's not going to work. And last but not least, after we've dealt with this illusion of separation and we've opened our eyes and hearts and minds to this idea of compassion, we talked about it a little bit before, but we really need to transcend this idea of dualistic thinking, of dualistic living, because it doesn't serve us. We said earlier that we don't live in a world of opposites. We live in a world of degrees. We live in a world of companionship, of working together. When we look at life unfolding from an embryo to a person, there's no opposite between the embryo and the person. There's an unfoldment. There's a level of degrees that has taken place to go from point A to point B and points beyond, right? And when we can adjust everything, perception and dualistic thinking and all of this, we can step into this idea of oneness and embrace peace like we've never done before. Like we've never done before. And so when we can do that, we can step into this idea as we close of being a part of life, not in life. Because if I say I'm in life, I've already separated myself. Because there's life and me got to get in it. But if I'm with life, if I'm a part of life, I'm already a part of it. There is no separation. There is oneness. And when we can step into that oneness and internalize it, and even more importantly, actualize it, with every breath, with every movement, with every person, with every challenge that we face, we begin to awaken to that idea that says, you are the one you've been waiting for. It's you. You the one keep the bad stuff in your head, not me. I got my own stuff I got to deal with. So when we can do that, we discover beneath everything that there is this one point. And Rumi says this. Rumi says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. Now, most people stop there. They say, I'll meet you there. But he goes on to say, I'll meet you there, where the soul lies down in the grass. The world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. We've gone beyond the duality. We've gone beyond all that other stuff. We're just here. When we do that, we become the blessing that we are looking for. Let us pray. Heavenly Mother, Father, God, that unique expression of life, that energetic field that awakens us to cosmic consciousness or God consciousness or Christ consciousness, that lets us know that there is one thing here that is animating and moving and dancing through each and everything in this universe. And we understand that back of it, through and as it, that there is an intelligence, an understanding, an activation that is available to us at any moment. Not from somewhere outside, but from the essence of who we are, a oneness that allows us to move and have our being in that one. And so it is there that I say right here, right now, that each and every one of us are taking on the mantle of that mantle of peace, that mantle of oneness, that mantle of compassion. And as we do, we begin to open our eyes and our mind and our very hearts to a world that we have seen very little of. That is a world where all things work together for the glory of God. And so I know and declare right here, right now, that this week and every week going forward, that we will be living from that overflow, that overflow of love and compassion and joy, so that we begin to resonate peace in everything we do. And so I give thanks for this moment and every moment, knowing that God is right by our side and that everything we do is predicated on that oneness. And so with that, I just release, I let go, and I know that this prayer is absolutely so and already activated in our lives to awaken us to the one. And so it is. Amen. And so, as always, we got a call to action. We have to have some work when we leave. And I two things this week. Pick one day this week and look at everything with compassion and see how it affects your day. Just one day. Just try to, and it'll be stop and start, but try to pick one day where everything you do, no matter how so-called good, look at it with compassion. And then meditate and focus on the connection of all things, the food you eat, the air you breathe, and the people who contribute to your well-being. Just meditate on that. And we do that by anchoring this affirmation that says, the divine in me recognizes and honors the divine in you.